Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, back to working on the metal planer restoration, and today's task is going to be to reassemble the cross slide and the clapper box assembly that goes onto this machine and hopefully get it installed back over onto the metal planer. So I think I got all my parts here. We've done a lot of work to various parts here and pieces here, and I think they're all ready to go back together. So let's get at it. So let's start with the clapper box itself. So they call this a clapper box because it claps. Basically, you have your cutter on here, and when it's pushing, it pushes back onto this nice and firm. When the tool is retracting, when the work's coming up underneath it, it'll slide up so it's not cutting and then cut on the return stroke. So what I need to do is put these studs in, and we made these studs in an earlier video to replace the original ones, which were just really in bad shape. So these are going to fit into these recessed holes up under the bottom, and they are different sizes, and I'm going to have to figure out which one goes into which one. These should be a press fit into that hole, or tap it in with a hammer or whatever, so that it will basically stay tight. So let me get my calipers out and measure. Like I said, each one of these was made to fit an individual hole, so I need to figure out which one goes in which hole. I'm over here on my arbor press, and I've got these studs in here. This is going to be a little clunky, not wanting to fit in here very well, but I'm hoping that I can get these to press in. It's going to be a tight fit. There goes that one. Okay. Scoot this over a little bit. Maybe we can get enough on that one to like to get a little bit more engagement with that ram here, but that looks like that's all it's going to get. Let's see if that'll do it. Yeah, I think we got it. All right, that one's in. Now I got the front two. Drop those in place. All right, that one's in. And that one's in. All right, those are all in now. Good deal. And we got our studs in. So just so you see how this works, you put your cutter in here. This is a planer type cutter, and there's a couple of cross pieces that go across here. I believe this one is original. I think this one was one that somebody made at some point in time. I may end up making some new ones of these at some point. Your nuts tighten up on these, and that basically holds your cutter in place and lets you do what you need for it to do. So there you go, one clapper box with the tool here, and you can see again it moves. So as it's pushing against the tool in this way, it's cutting. It holds it in place. When the work comes back behind it, the tool will pick up just from the force, so that it's not actually cutting. There's a set screw here on the side where you can tighten that up and actually make it rigid so that it doesn't clap. I got a screw in there, a hole in there for that to fit into, but in most operations you'll leave that loose. I'll just show you how this works. We'll take all this off for the rest of the assembly. So up next, I've got a bevel gear that fits down in the bottom here, and I need to tell a little bit about this. So whenever I took this apart, if you guys remember that video, That's what the original bevel gear down there looked like. Teeth were stripped off of it. It was in rough shape, and there was a matching gear that we'll show you here in a minute. It was in similar shape. I had to have new bevel gears made, and unfortunately I was not able to make these myself. I just didn't have the right stuff in my shop to do this. So I sent this up to American Machine and Gear Works up in Milwaukee, and WJ up there was gracious enough to take this project on. It was a paying job. I paid him to do it, but he made me a nice set of bevel gears. He's in the gear making business, and he had the proper equipment to do this. So I just wanted to kind of show those to you there. That gear fits through like such, and then on the back side here that sticks out, and there's another bevel gear that fits on there, and that needs to be pinned in place. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go over to the arbor press again, and we're going to press this gear on, and then I need to go to the milling machine, and we're going to put a Dutchman's key in there to hold it in place. So we'll put our gear in, and I need a little spacer up underneath here to kind of hold that in place. So I just going to use this piece that was over on the clapper box. It fits just right. I'm going to drop that in there. Now that gear is actually sitting on top of that pin that I just put in there, or that spacer. Now let me get my gear. And this bevel gear really doesn't matter exactly where it's at. It just needs to fit on there. And let's press that in place. It should all just kind of self-align here, and it feels like it's tight. Looks good. Now that is so tight that it's not turning, so what I'm going to do is just we're just going to press it out just ever so slightly to loosen it up just enough. Really, I can kind of feel that piece needs to be kind of flush on the top there. Doesn't need much. There we go. I think that'll be fine. Over on the milling machine now, and I've got this just set down, clamped down to the table, and what I'm going to do is drill a couple of holes in here. And before, originally, these had it was actually tapered pins that were driven in there. I'm going a little bit different route. I'm just going to drill and tap a hole, and we'll just put a little set screw in there, which basically does the same thing. What that will do is prevent this from turning. It's basically a keyway that's on there. The advantage of the threaded piece rather than the tapered is that it will also keep it from coming out with use. So it's going to lock it in both directions because the threads will prevent that lateral movement. This is a 1024, so I got a number 25 drill bit. I'm just going to start. I want to put me a little dimple there to get started, and I want it right on that transition between the two pieces. Are pretty darn close to it, and let's put our drill bit in now. I have to drop the table down a little bit. There we go. And I'm just going to drill that hole right in between the cast iron and the brass. All right, that should be plenty. I'm going to move my table over, and I'm just going to hand tap that. I don't want to power tap that because we're going into a blind hole. We got a 1024 tap here. And get some threads going down into there. This is just a regular tap to start with. I'm going to pull it out and go in there with a bottoming tap next, since we're going down into a hole. Regular tap starts off where basically it just tapers in till you get to your full cut. And if you're going into a blind hole, you don't have threads all the way down into the bottom of that hole. So bottoming tap, on the other hand, it has threads all the way down to the bottom, but you need to start with the taper tap and then finish with the bottoming tap, because the bottoming tap isn't going to want to start those threads. But once you get those threads defined, it'll follow right down through there. And now we'll have threads all the way to the bottom of the hole. And there we go. So now that is locked in place. I probably ought to put some Loctite on that. I think I'll take it out and put some Loctite on there. I'm gonna go ahead and put another one across from it. The original had 2. 1 is probably enough, but 1's good, 2's probably better. We'll follow suit. And just as a note, I didn't try to reuse those old holes because it would be nearly impossible to drill a hole down those and get a good hole down through there because the material's already out on one side. So anytime you have to replace a Dutchman key, you just have to start a new hole. But there's what we're after. I'll do the other one off camera, put some Loctite on those. So continuing on, we've got our matching part of our bevel gear set that fits down the bottom here. I'm going to feed in the screw here, and we've got our nut that screws into that. Put a little oil down in here too. We will attach the cross slide to this screw in a later step, but for right now I need to go ahead and get it going in. I've already got the holes drilled and a tapered pin ready to go into this gear on the bottom. So let's see, get all that to line up properly. There we go. So that lines up like such. And this gear is just pinned in place. So let's tap that home. All right, that tapered pin holds that in place, and you can see as this turns, as it rotates, it moves the nut up and down. This nut will be attached to the cross slide, which then move up and down. And it can be controlled either by the automatic feed, which comes through this bevel gear in the back, which will just index it a little bit at a time, or there'll be a hand wheel up on the top that you can manually turn this depending on what mode you're in. So I think we got all of that in here. The next step will be to put this stem up here on the top, put a little oil in there, get that oil spread around, and that just screws into this hole. And this piece here just kind of captures that nut in there and keeps it from pulling out toward you. Just put my handle up here just temporarily, and you can see that as I turn that, that's moving that up and down. It's rotating the gears down here. Everything appears to be in good shape. So I think the next step is to go ahead and put the cross slide on here. I want to clean these ways out, make sure no trash or dust or dirt are in those. Same thing over here. And I am going to put some oil on this. Kind of have to pick that up to get it over that nut in there, and the nut should, I can see the holes through there. I need to get them lined up. Here we go. I felt it drop down on there. There's a pin in the middle that goes up into a hole, and then there's these 2 nuts or 2 screws that hold it all in place and draw it all in there tight. Insert our gib in here. And put our screws in there to hold the gib in. I've still got to make a screw. One of these was missing when I got the machine, but we're going to put 3 in there for right now, and I will get that screw made a little bit later on. There we go. Moves as easy as can be. Our handle up here on the top. Next up is to put the clapper box on here, and if you look, there's a little hole down here in the bottom that fits up over this boss, and that allows us to rotate on the cross slide. Before I put that on there, I want to put a little oil behind this. This allows us to move this around to get it to the angle that we need. Let's see, we need some oil up here too. There we go. And there is a screw that fits down on that, and it's got a couple of pins in there to drive it. I'm going to have to, I can't get this to go around it, so let me work on something else to actually drive that with to get it going in there. I hate to use a punch to move these around. You just screw up the holes when you do that, but sometimes you just don't really have a choice. Let's see if I can get this on down a little bit more without having to break the punch out there. We about got it anyway there. All right. So again, this is basically, we'll rotate a little bit from angle to side, so you can adjust your cutter a little bit. And there's a couple of screws or bolts that'll go in here to tighten that up, and probably gonna have to find some to fit. I don't think the original ones are still around. But other than that, I think this is all assembled and ready to go back on the machine. I'm over here at the planer, and I have moved my whole head down that this is going to mount to, so I got a screw on the end down here that I can get this going here. I can adjust that in and out. Anyway, I just pulled it all the way out here to the end where I can grab a hold of it real easily. There's another screw in here. This turns a bevel gear that actually engages with this bevel gear to move that head up and down. So I'm going to leave my handle there where I can get those meshed. Now there's 2 bolts that come out of this, and these bolts are what this will fit up onto. I'm going to turn the head 90 degrees and slide it up on there. I can just make them hopefully stay there on the very top and bottom position. They will be on the sides when they're actually in use, but this will help me get it going. And also, as before, I want to put some oil on here. This will be rotating around on this boss, or this piece here, so I want to make sure we got some lubrication in there. All right, this thing is heavy. Ideally, I would have my gantry crane over here, but it's in another part of the shop, and I think I can do this without it. So we're going to try it. So let me get that bottom bolt started. Get the top bolt started. There we go. And then we've got these nuts that tighten that in place. And of course, you can rotate this head around to an angle if you want to actually cut at an angle. Most of the time, it's just going to be set in a vertical mode going up and down. So let me get a wrench and tighten these up, and we'll be right back. All right. And with that, we're really making progress. We got this back onto the machine now, finally. My clapper box, my cross slide, everything is reassembled, everything looks great. So I went ahead and put a cutter in here just so you can kind of see this. Again, you got the clapping action. The part will be mounted to the table and the part will move under the cutter, and then it'll go on a backstroke. And again, when it goes on the backstroke, it'll just pick the cutter up. It drops back down when it comes off to work, comes right back in there. Later models actually had a mechanism that it would lift the cutter for you on the return stroke. On the early models like this one, it just kind of drug back across your work, but it was fine. So let me show you the functions here. So you got the left to right motion. There's a gear train over here. So on every stroke of this, it will automatically move your cutter over one way or the other, just one step at a time. You can adjust how much it moves it. So it'll take a stroke, move over either left or right, depending on how you have it set. Now, the other way you could do this is instead of cutting across the top of a part, you may want to cut on the side of a part or cut at an angle on a part. And in that case, you would want it to move up and down on the cross slide here. You could rotate this to whatever angle you want. Well, up to 45 degrees in either direction. Same mechanism. So, we got the up and down here by hand. Of course, if you notice, that bevel gear is engaged with the shaft back here, so that's moving along with it. Or I can use the side controls, and I can actually control that up and down. And again, if you're planing up and down or at an angle, the automatic feed will automatically index that, down a notch each cut, just like you would want it for it to do. So in this way, it wouldn't be moving left and right, it'd be moving up and down or at an angle. So you can really cut with this in pretty much any direction you want to go. Now you would adjust the whole piece up and down. You really didn't make adjustments in the machine while it was working, moving the whole cross slide up and down. You'd pretty much just set that where you wanted it to go. Your height adjustment would all be over here in the cross slide. So anyway, we are definitely one big step closer to having this machine ready to cut chips. In fact, other than just a few little small things here and there, this is the last major thing we had to do. The next big thing I've got to do is to get it under power, and I'm going to have to make a motor mount. I'm going to put a motor on the machine to drive the flat belt pulleys to drive this. I would love to run this off of a line shaft, but I'm just not really ready to set a line shaft up in my shop, so I think we're going to just put the counter shaft on the machine and the motor on the machine where we can make it all self-contained. That's the game plan right now. At some point in the future, I would love to get a line shaft in here and maybe get a couple of flat belt machines that I can run. But for right now, the goal is to start making some chips. I do need to still get my crosshead adjusted left and right. Now that I've got all this on here, I can get some pieces on here with an indicator and get this thing adjusted and get these gears up on the top so that when you raise and lower everything that it will stay parallel. So I've still got that to do. Like I said, just some little small things on here and then getting the motor going, and we can hopefully make some chips. So big step forward today, getting this cross slide and clapper box all mounted back on the machine. Well, there you go. Wow, I'm glad to have this thing behind me. I'll be honest with you guys, when I took this thing apart, found those gears stripped out and saw the damage and the work that we had to do in it, it was a little bit disheartening at the time. But now that we've pretty much all got it back together and we're across those bridges and got the challenges worked out, I'm real happy with the end results. And this is in as good a shape as it ever was right now. In fact, with everything scraped in like it is, it's probably in better shape than it was when it was new. So really excited to have this behind me, and we can move on toward the next big step of getting this machine under power. So guys, with that, that will be a wrap. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that little bell icon up there on your screen. That will give you notifications when I post new videos. And guys, as always, those comments are appreciated, as are those thumbs up, and we will catch you on the next video. As always, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.